My name is Astrid, and I'm 32 years old. I've been thinking about sharing this story for a long time, but it's not easy. It's a story about trust, vulnerability, and betrayal. It's about how someone I trusted took advantage of me in ways I never thought possible. I remember the day I met my nurse, Britt, like it was yesterday. She had a kind face and a warm smile. She introduced herself and explained what she would be doing to help me recover from my surgery. I was nervous, but she put me at ease. She seemed like someone I could trust. As I lay in the hospital bed, I couldn't help but think about how much I valued trust. Trust is everything, isn't it? When you're vulnerable, when you're at your weakest, you need to be able to trust the people around you. And I did. I trusted Britt with my life. Britt was my primary nurse, and she took care of me with precision and care. She'd check my vitals, administer medication, and chat with me about my day. I started to look forward to her visits, feeling like I could talk to her about anything. But as the days went by, I started to notice little things that didn't seem quite right. At first, it was just a feeling that something wasn't quite right, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was just being paranoid. After all, Britt was my nurse. She was there to help me, to make me better. But the feeling lingered, growing stronger with each passing day. And then, one day, something happened that changed everything. Something that made me realize I wasn't safe, that I wasn't in control. Something that made me question everything. I'm not sure why I'm sharing this story now. Maybe it's because I want people to know what happened to me. Maybe it's because I want to warn others. Whatever the reason, I know I need to share this story. It's a story that will make you angry, sad, and maybe even scared. But it's my story, and it's one that I need to tell. As I think back on that experience, I realize that it was a turning point in my life. It was a moment when everything changed, and I was forced to confront the harsh realities of the world. I'm still trying to process what happened, to make sense of it all. But I know one thing for sure. I'll never forget what I learned from that experience. I'll never forget the feeling of vulnerability, of powerlessness. I'll never forget the fear and the anger that followed. But most of all, I'll never forget the lessons I learned about trust, about boundaries, and about standing up for myself. This is my story, and it's one that I hope will resonate with you. I grew up in a small town in Minnesota, where everyone knows each other. My family is Swedish American, and we value honesty and integrity above all else. My parents always taught me to be kind and compassionate towards others. I was a happy child, always playing with my siblings and friends. As I got older, I realized my parents' values had stuck with me, and I tried to live by them. I've always been active, enjoying hiking and biking in my free time. But about a year ago, I started experiencing severe pain in my lower back. At first, I thought it was just a pulled muscle, but the pain persisted. After several doctor visits and tests, I was diagnosed with a herniated disc. The doctor recommended surgery, and I was scheduled for the procedure a few weeks later. The days leading up to the surgery were tough. I had to take time off work and rely on my family and friends for help. My mom would come over to cook meals for me, and my friends would stop by to visit. I was grateful for their support, but I couldn't help feeling frustrated. I wasn't used to being dependent on others. The surgery day arrived, and I was nervous but relieved it was finally happening. The procedure went smoothly, and I was recovering well. However, the road to recovery was long and challenging. I had to undergo physical therapy, and the pain was intense at times, but I was determined to get better. As I lay in the hospital bed after the surgery, I met my nurse, Britt. She was kind and professional, explaining everything she was doing to help me recover. I trusted her immediately. She seemed like someone who genuinely cared about her patients. Over the next few days, Britt took care of me with precision and care. She'd check my vitals, administer medication, and chat with me about my day. I started to look forward to her visits, feeling like I could talk to her about anything. She'd ask me about my family and friends, and I'd share stories about my life. I thought she was genuinely interested in getting to know me. As the days went by, I began to feel more comfortable around her. I'd tell her about my pain levels, and she'd adjust my medication accordingly. My family would visit me regularly, and Britt would update them on my condition. They were relieved to see me recovering well, and they were grateful for Britt's care. I felt lucky to have such a great nurse. But as time passed, I started to notice little things that didn't seem quite right. Britt would sometimes seem a bit distant or preoccupied. She'd forget to bring me medication or take longer than usual to respond to my call bell. At first, I brushed it off as exhaustion or a bad day. Nurses work long hours and they're bound to have off days. But the incidents kept happening, and I started to feel a growing sense of unease. I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was, but something about Britt's behavior seemed off. I'd try to push the thoughts away, focusing on my recovery and getting better, but the feeling lingered, and I couldn't shake it off. As I lay in bed, I'd think about my life before the surgery. I'd think about my job, my friends, and my family. I was a marketing specialist, and I loved my job. I enjoyed creating campaigns and working with my team. But after the surgery, everything seemed different. I felt vulnerable and scared. I didn't know what the future held, and I couldn't help but wonder if I'd ever be the same again. The days turned into weeks, and I slowly started to recover. But the experience had left me shaken. I couldn't help but think about what could have been if things had gone differently. I started to appreciate the little things in life, like being able to walk without pain or spend time with loved ones. But despite the progress I was making, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off about Britt. Little things she'd say or do would stick with me, and I'd find myself wondering what she was really thinking. I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was, but Britt's behavior started to change. She'd come into my room, and instead of her usual warm smile, she'd seem distant. She'd barely acknowledge me, just going about her tasks without a word. I'd try to talk to her, but she'd respond with short, curt answers. One day, I asked her for pain medication, and she seemed put off. "You're always asking for more meds," she said, her voice cold. I was taken aback. I'd been clear about my pain levels, and the doctor had prescribed medication accordingly. I didn't understand why she was reacting this way. As the days went by, Britt's behavior became more erratic. She'd forget to give me medication or delay bringing me food. When I complained, she'd apologize, but her tone would be dismissive. I'd try to brush it off, thinking maybe she was having a bad day, but the incidents kept happening. One evening, Britt came into my room, and I was feeling particularly weak. She started to change my IV, and I winced in pain. "You're being dramatic," she said, her voice dripping with annoyance. I was shocked. I'd never been spoken to like that before, especially not by a healthcare professional. I tried to stay calm, thinking maybe I was misreading the situation. But as the night wore on, Britt's behavior only got worse. She'd ignore my call bell, leaving me to suffer in silence. When I finally got her attention, she'd seem put out, like I was bothering her. I started to feel like I was walking on eggshells around her. I'd try to anticipate her moods, hoping to avoid her wrath. But it was impossible. She seemed to take pleasure in making me uncomfortable. I'd catch her looking at me with a cold gaze, and I'd feel a shiver run down my spine. The other nurses on the floor seemed kind and caring, but Britt was different. They'd try to reassure me, telling me that Britt was just having a tough time, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. I'd try to talk to the doctor about it, but he'd just smile and tell me that Britt was a great nurse. As the days turned into weeks, I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. Britt's behavior was unpredictable, and I never knew what to expect. I'd try to stay strong, but the pain and discomfort were taking a toll on me. I felt like I was all alone, with no one to turn to. One night, Britt came into my room, and I was feeling particularly vulnerable. She started to talk to me in a condescending tone, telling me that I was being uncooperative. I tried to defend myself, but she just talked over me, her voice growing louder. I felt like I was being belittled, and I didn't know how to respond. As she left the room, I felt a wave of fear wash over me. I didn't know what Britt was capable of, and I didn't know how to protect myself. I lay in bed, my heart racing, wondering what would happen next. Would she continue to treat me with disdain? Would she do something even more hurtful? I didn't know, but I knew I had to find a way to get through to someone. Anyone who could help me. Britt's behavior towards me continued to deteriorate. One day, she deliberately withheld my pain medication, leaving me in agony. When I finally got her attention, she handed me the pills with a cold, almost dismissive gesture. "You're always complaining about pain," she said. "Maybe you're just looking for attention." I felt a surge of frustration. "I'm in pain, Britt. That's why I'm asking for medication." She shrugged. "You need to learn to manage your pain better." The other nurses seemed oblivious to her behavior, or maybe they just didn't want to get involved. I started to wonder if anyone would believe me if I reported her. Days turned into weeks, and Britt's actions became more aggressive. She'd yank at my IV tubes, causing me to wince in pain. When I asked her to be more gentle, she'd just tell me I was being too sensitive. One evening, she came into my room, her tone icy. "You need to get out of bed and walk," she said, even though I was barely able to move. When I explained that the doctor hadn't cleared me for physical activity, she scoffed. "You're just lazy. You need to push yourself." I tried to reason with her, but she wouldn't listen. Instead, she pulled back the covers and roughly grabbed my arm, trying to pull me out of bed. I dug my heels into the mattress, terrified. "Stop, Britt. Please. I'm not supposed to be moving like this." She glared at me, her eyes flashing with anger. For a moment, I thought she might actually hurt me. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, she stopped, turned, and walked out of the room, leaving me shaken and scared. The next day, I saw a different nurse, one who seemed kind and genuinely concerned about my well-being. I hesitated, unsure if I should say anything about Britt, but something about this nurse's warm demeanor put me at ease. Maybe it was the way she listened attentively, or the gentle way she touched my arm. Whatever it was, I found myself opening up to her about Britt's behavior. She listened thoughtfully, her expression growing increasingly concerned. "I'll make sure to talk to the doctor about your care and see if we can't get things adjusted for you," she said reassuringly. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe someone would finally listen and things would change. Maybe Britt's behavior would be addressed and I'd finally get the care I needed. But as the day wore on, I couldn't shake off the feeling that Britt's retaliation would be swift and merciless if she found out I'd spoken up. And I couldn't help but wonder if speaking out would make things better or worse. That evening, Britt came back into my room, her smile saccharine. "I hear you've been talking about me," she said, her voice dripping with malice. I swallowed hard, trying to stay calm. "I just want to be treated with respect and get the care I need." Britt leaned against the door frame, her eyes glinting with a mixture of anger and amusement. "You're going to regret crossing me," she whispered, before turning and walking away. I lay in bed, my heart racing, wondering what would happen next. Would anyone intervene before things escalated further? Or would I be trapped in this nightmare, with no escape? The darkness closing in around me seemed to grow thicker, heavier, as I waited with bated breath for whatever came next. I was running out of options. Britt's behavior was getting worse, and I didn't know who to turn to. The other nurses seemed friendly, but they didn't seem to notice or care about Britt's actions. The doctors were always in a hurry, and I didn't want to bother them with my concerns. One day, I asked my family to come and sit with me during the day. Maybe having them around would keep Brit in check. But even with them there, Brit's behavior didn't change. She'd make snide comments and ignore my needs, just like before. My family noticed the change in Brit's behavior, and they started to get worried. "What's going on with your nurse?" my mom asked, concern etched on her face. "She seems really cold." I hesitated, unsure if I should tell them everything. But something about their worried faces made me open up. "She's been treating me poorly," I said, trying to keep my voice down. "I don't know what to do." My family exchanged worried glances. "We'll talk to the doctor," my dad said firmly. "This isn't right." But when the doctor came to visit, Brit was always hovering around, smiling and chatting with him. The doctor seemed oblivious to the tension in the room, and he never stayed long enough for me to talk to him privately. I felt trapped and alone, with no way out. Brit seemed to have all the power, and I was at her mercy. I started to wonder if anyone would believe me if I reported her. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe I was just a difficult patient. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Brit's behavior was not normal, and I needed help. I started to think about reporting her to the hospital administration, but I didn't know where to start. One day, a social worker came to visit me. She seemed kind and genuinely concerned about my well-being. I hesitated, unsure if I should trust her, but something about her warm smile put me at ease. "Can I talk to you about my nurse?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The social worker nodded, her expression attentive. "Of course. What's going on?" I took a deep breath and started to tell her everything. About Brit's cold behavior, about the way she'd ignore my needs and make snide comments. The social worker listened attentively, her expression growing increasingly concerned. "I'll make sure to document everything and talk to the doctor," she said firmly. "We'll get this sorted out." For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe someone would finally listen and things would change. Maybe Brit's behavior would be addressed, and I'd finally get the care I needed. But as the social worker left, I couldn't shake off the feeling that Brit would find out, and things would get worse. And I couldn't help but wonder if I'd made a mistake by speaking out. Would anyone believe me? Would anyone care? I lay in bed, my body aching from the surgery. Brit's behavior had been getting worse, and I didn't know how much more I could take. The social worker had promised to help, but so far, nothing had changed. Brit came into my room, her expression cold and detached. "It's time for your medication," she said, her voice flat. I looked at her, feeling a surge of frustration. "Can you please just be kind to me?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I'm in pain, and I just need some care." Brit's expression didn't change. "You're just a patient," she said. "I'm here to do my job." Something inside me snapped. I couldn't take her coldness anymore. "You're not just doing your job," I said, my voice rising. "You're supposed to care about people. You're supposed to be kind." Brit's eyes flashed with anger. "I'm doing my job just fine," she said. "You're just a difficult patient." I felt a wave of anger wash over me. "I'm not being difficult," I said. "I'm just trying to get the care I need, and you're not giving it to me." Brit's face turned red with anger. "You're ungrateful," she said. "You're lucky to have me as your nurse." I shook my head, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. "I'm not lucky," I said. "I'm trapped in this hospital with a nurse who doesn't care about me." Brit's expression turned ugly. "You're just a waste of time," she said. "You don't deserve my care." Something inside me broke. I knew I had to get out of there, to find a way to escape from Brit's cruelty. I looked around the room, feeling a sense of desperation. That's when I saw the phone on the bedside table. I grabbed it and dialed the number of the hospital's patient advocacy department. When someone answered, I took a deep breath and explained my situation. "I need help," I said, My nurse is being cruel to me. I don't know what to do." The person on the other end of the line listened attentively, asking questions and making notes. "We'll send someone to talk to you right away," she said. "Hang in there, help is on the way." I felt a sense of relief wash over me. Maybe, just maybe, someone would finally listen and do something about Britt's behavior. Maybe I wouldn't have to suffer through this anymore. As I waited for help to arrive, Britt came back into the room. "You think you're so special, don't you?" she said, her voice dripping with malice. "You think you can just report me and get rid of me?" I looked at her, feeling a sense of determination. "I'm not trying to get rid of you," I said. "I'm just trying to get the care I deserve, and I won't stop until I get it." Britt's expression turned ugly, and for a moment, I thought she might lash out at me. But then she turned and walked out of the room, leaving me shaken but determined. I knew I had reached a breaking point. I couldn't take Britt's cruelty anymore. I had to fight back, no matter what it took. And I was ready to do just that. The door opened, and a kind-faced woman walked in. "Hello, I'm Karen from Patient Advocacy," she said. "I understand you're having some issues with your nurse." I nodded, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. "Yes, she's been cruel to me," I said. "I don't know what to do." Karen's expression was sympathetic. "We'll do everything we can to help you," she said. "Can you tell me more about what's been going on?" I took a deep breath and started to explain, telling her about Britt's behavior and how it had escalated over time. Karen listened attentively, her expression growing increasingly concerned. As I finished my story, Karen nodded thoughtfully. "We'll investigate this and do everything we can to ensure your safety and well-being," she said. "You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness." I felt a sense of relief wash over me. Maybe, just maybe, things were finally going to change. Maybe I would finally get the care I deserved. And maybe, just maybe, Britt would be held accountable for her actions. Karen from Patient Advocacy sat down beside my bed, her expression firm but kind. "We've investigated the allegations against Britt, and we've decided to reassign her to a different patient," she said. "You'll be getting a new nurse, and we'll make sure she provides you with the care you deserve." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Finally, someone was taking action. Finally, I would be free from Britt's cruelty. Just then, Britt walked into the room, her expression icy. "I hear you're the one who's been complaining about me," she said, her voice dripping with malice. I stood my ground, looking her straight in the eye. "I've been telling the truth about your behavior," I said. "You're not providing me with the care I need, and you're being cruel to me." Britt's face turned red with anger. "You're just a difficult patient," she spat. "You don't know how to follow orders." Karen stepped in, her voice firm. "Britt, that's enough. We've made the decision to reassign you to a different patient. Please gather your things and leave the room." Britt's expression turned ugly, and for a moment, I thought she might lash out. But then she turned and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. Karen watched her go, then turned to me. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," she said, "but we're committed to providing you with the best care possible. Your new nurse will be in soon to introduce herself." I nodded, feeling a sense of gratitude towards Karen. Maybe, just maybe, things were finally starting to look up. The door opened and a new nurse walked in. She had a kind smile and a warm expression. "Hi, I'm Emily," she said. "I'll be your nurse from now on. I'll do my best to provide you with the care you need." I smiled back at her, feeling a sense of hope. Maybe this nurse would be different. Maybe she would treat me with kindness and respect. Emily started her rounds, checking my IV and medication. She was gentle and efficient, and I felt a sense of relief wash over me. As the day went on, Emily proved to be a competent and caring nurse. She listened to my concerns and addressed them promptly. She was kind and compassionate, and I started to feel like I was finally getting the care I deserved. But as I looked around the room, I couldn't shake off the feeling that Britt's behavior had left its mark on me. I couldn't help but wonder if I would ever be able to trust nurses again. Only time would tell. As the days passed, I slowly started to heal. Emily, my new nurse, was kind and competent. She listened to my concerns and addressed them promptly. The pain started to subside, and I began to feel like myself again. One day, as Emily was changing my dressing, I asked her about Britt. "What happened to her?" I asked. Emily's expression turned serious. "Britt is no longer working on this floor," she said. "The hospital administration took action after receiving your complaint." I nodded, feeling a sense of satisfaction. Maybe, just maybe, my ordeal had led to something positive. As I lay in bed, I couldn't help but reflect on my experience. I thought about the way Britt had treated me, the way she had made me feel like I was worthless. I thought about the fear and anxiety I had felt, the way I had doubted myself. But I also thought about the people who had helped me, who had listened to me and taken action. Karen from patient advocacy, Emily, my new nurse, they had both been kind and compassionate. I realized that my experience had taught me something important. It had taught me that even in the darkest moments, there is always hope. There are always people who care, who will listen and help. As I looked out the window, I felt a sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the people who had helped me. Gratitude for the lesson I had learned. I knew that I would never forget my experience, and I knew that it would shape me into a stronger person. The door opened, and a doctor walked in. "You're doing great," he said. "You're almost ready to be discharged." I smiled, feeling a sense of excitement. I couldn't wait to go home, to start my new life. I knew that I would always carry the scars of my experience with me, but I also knew that I would be okay. The doctor started to explain the discharge process, and I listened intently. I was ready to move on, to start fresh. I was ready to leave the hospital behind and start my new life. If you're watching this video, chances are you've experienced something similar to what I went through with my nurse. Maybe you've been treated poorly by a healthcare professional, or maybe you've witnessed someone else being treated unfairly. Whatever your experience, I want you to know that you're not alone. As someone who's been through a similar situation, I want to encourage you to speak up if you're being treated poorly. Don't be afraid to advocate for yourself and demand the care you deserve. If you're not getting the care you need, don't hesitate to reach out to patient advocacy or hospital administration. If you're a healthcare professional watching this, I want to encourage you to treat your patients with kindness and respect. Remember, patients are people, not just cases or charts. They're someone's mother, father, sister, brother, daughter, or son. They're human beings who deserve compassion and care. If you're wondering what you can do to help, here are a few things. First, subscribe to my channel for more videos about healthcare and patient advocacy. Second, share this video with someone who might benefit from it. And third, leave a comment below with your own experiences or tips for advocating for yourself in a healthcare setting. Together, we can create a more compassionate and caring healthcare system. Let's start a conversation and work towards making a difference. If you want to stay up to date, be sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.